So they brought national acts to Riverside Drive in Mount Vernon. The first act, one of our big favorites, Lawrence Welk. Played on Riverside Drive. And then rightly after that, Louis Armstrong actually played. So Friday nights were teen nights. Saturday nights, Harry's 10-piece orchestra played. But surely, during these Friday night events, a punk band had to have played there, right? Totally. Guaranteed. Or wait, maybe it goes back further. Maybe these dudes from 1890, who are credited as being Mount Vernon's first band, maybe they were the first. Or was it these cats who were on what is now known as Fidalgo Street in Cedar Woolley? Totally punk. Or was it this cat, the Edison Saloon, sometime in the 1890s? Hipster for sure. You can totally tell. But then I thought, no, that can't be, because for thousands of years there have been indigenous people here in the same geography that inspires us. Bill and Mary Jacobs are here in 1912, and they're playing music that was probably shown to them by their parents, their grandparents, their great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, and somewhere along the line there had to have been a punk band playing here long before the settlers showed up. And then I thought, this is crazy. I'm going too far down the bunny hole and I'm never going to get done with this project. So then I started asking myself the question, what is punk? You ever asked yourself that question? It reminds me of that 1960s Supreme Court case where they were trying to define obscenity. And the Supreme Court justice said, well, I don't know how to define it, but I know obscenity when I see it. Now, that's kind of the way I felt about punk. It's like, I know what it is, I just don't know how to define it. So I went back to the internet and I started looking up quotes from some of my favorite punkers. I looked up what Ian MacKaye from Fugazi, A Minor Threat, founder of Discord Records and the DC hardcore scene. What did he have to say about it? Well, he said, it's a free space. It could be jazz, it could be blues, it could be techno. Well, that doesn't really help me out. He says it's new ideas being able to be presented in an environment that wasn't dictated by a profit motive. That made sense. That made sense, because if any of the punks that played in Skagit Valley I knew were dictated by a profit motive, that wouldn't have worked out. They wouldn't have stayed very long. So I looked at this cat. What's he have to say about it? I remember his song where he said, punk ain't no religious cult. Punk means thinking for yourself. He says punk is the concept of staying independent and doing things for yourself. Again, he sidesteps the whole concept of genre or style, right? He's not saying it's, you gotta have a mohawk, you gotta have, you gotta look this way, or your songs all have to be 3 chords and they have to be fast and tight. No, he says it's about being independent and doing things yourself. And I thought, wow, that rings true too, because all the punk bands I knew do things themselves. So I called up Brett Lunsford. Brett Lunsford is one of the most important musicians in Skagit County. He's a musician, being in the incredibly awesome band Beat Happening, punk band Beat Happening. He's an author of many books on history, and he's the Anacortes Museum director too. So I thought, this guy knows about old stuff. And I called Brett and I said, Brett, what is punk rock? And I asked the right person, because Brett has his finger on this stuff. And Brett says, for thousands of years, there's been this concept of self-entertainment. We've always gotten together and played music for ourselves and for our friends and our family and close-knit people. Somewhere around the 20s or the 1920s, the 1930s, Edison creates the phonograph record and a music business starts up. And they start putting bands on tours with these vaudeville acts, and now you you can actually pay money to go see musicians play. So learning music isn't as important as just going and purchasing music and consuming music. And he says, Brett says, by the 1970s, our skill sets had somewhat atrophied. And the entire thing had kind of been monopolized by this profit motive. And there was no more reason to make music for yourself, and it all got dull and homogenous. Out of that came a bunch of people who said, you know what? Let's go back to self-entertainment. Let's be inspired to make music regardless of genre, and let's not conform to the norms. Let's do it ourselves. And that, I had enough to make a definition of punk rock. Number one, I threw in, okay, it's got to be after the 70s. No more going back to these old books. They're smelly and they make me sneeze. Number two, the band has to have a do-it-yourself ethos. They have to sidestep the mainstream music business, and they're doing this themselves. Am I right about this so far? Okay. Number three, the band does not conform to the norms. Number four, they play original music. It wasn't enough to have a punk cover band. I wanted somebody that made their own music to get the badge of being the first Skagit punk band. And number five, I threw in there without profit motive. Okay, before we go into who is the first punk band, I have to do a sidestep. I have to tell you about the primordial ooze that the punk rose out of. There was a band that I saw in 1980, right after Mount St. Helens blew its stack. Right after that, I went to the Jefferson School Carnival. And I saw this band, Dice. Dice was pre-punk. They were playing covers, but they were pretty cool. They were fronted by 12-year-old Nick Denke on vocals and guitar. 13-year-old Matt Phillips on drums, 14-year-old Rob Copeland on bass, and the old man, Mike Shiro, was 16. These guys played all over, up and down the I-5 corridor, including right across the street. I don't know which way we're pointing, but what used to be Hugo Helmer's and now's Easton's books. They're playing the Sidewalk Sale. I'm wondering if you can guess how I felt when I saw 12-year-old Nick Denke, dwarfed by that guitar, screaming the lyrics to the Beatles' Revolution. And check out those girls. Look how they're looking at him. Oh, man. My mind was blown. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So later, Nick and some of the guys in that band go on to form Asylum, write their own music, and actually become an independent DIY band. But before that, we've got to answer, was it Asylum who was the first punk band? Or who was the first punk band? Who knows? Shout it out. Who was the first punk band in Skagit Valley?
Spoiled!
Yeah, I don't know what you're thinking. Okay. Here's what I did to figure this out. I called up some of my friends. I called up Bob Vokes because I knew he was in public service. And I said, Bob, was public service the first punk band in Skagit County? And Bob says, I don't know, I don't think so. You're gonna need to call John Lunsford. I called John Lunsford. I said, John, was the Crabs the first punk band in Skagit County? And then John told me what a bunch of other people told me after I went down the bunny hole. The very first punk band in Skagit County, the punk rock, rose up out of the Puget Sound and stood for the first time on Fidalgo Island as the Outcasts. The Outcasts were Brian Elliott on vocals, Sid Olson guitar, Neil Medea on guitar, and Dale Robinson on bass. You may recognize these names because a bunch of these cats went on to do some really other cool stuff. So they were the Outcasts for a very short time, and then they swapped out guitars and got Sid's brother, Bryce, to play drums, and they changed their name to The Spoiled. I called Sid, and I said, "Were you the first punk band in Skagit County?" And Sid said, "Oh, absolutely." Absolutely. He was not confused. I said, "Tell me some stories." So Sid said, "Our first gig was at the Masonic Temple in Anacortes. Dale's dad was the Grand Wizard or whatever. We fully thought it would be a punk show, but his dad billed it as a formal dance. A dance for the DeMole boys and the Rainbow Girls. Those are like the kids of the Masons. So, a bunch of punks showed up, mixed up with people dressed for a formal prom. We had a rope attaching the PA speakers for some reason. Maybe it was to separate us rock stars from the crowd. However, after the third song, this is The Spoiled, keep in mind, 1981, some Mason unplugged the power and said we were done. He plugged it back in, played 2 more songs. And the Mason tried to unplug it again. But somebody punched him in the face. And he fell back into that rope, which brought the PA speakers crashing down. End of show. Sid says we eventually rented out the depot for $50 a night. We charged $3 a head and made enough money every month to pay our rent on our rental on 28th Street. Is that DIY or what? That was awesome. So, there's a picture of Sid telling me the story. I was supposed to advance it once a little bit earlier. So, during my research of the first punk band, the name Calvin Johnson kept coming up over and over. Calvin was there. Calvin saw that. So I contacted Calvin Johnson, the creator of K Records, who was also in that band Beat Happening with Brett Lunsford. Calvin Johnson and Brett's label, K Records, was so important to Kurt Cobain that he had the K Record label tattooed on him. So Calvin knows a thing or two about DIY and punk. And when Calvin heard that I was doing this presentation on the history of Skagit punk, he was more than happy to talk about how much Skagit Valley punk rock inspired him to start the movement of K Records in Olympia with Brett. Calvin told me about another cool show with The Spoiled. Calvin said on Friday, July 2nd, 1982, a pal from Olympia and I hitchhiked to Anacortes. It was our first night stopping on the way to a Black Flag concert in Vancouver, BC on July 3rd. Give it up for Black Flag. Okay, there was a local punk show that Friday at a Grange Hall on Fidalgo Island. When we got there, The Spoiled were playing. It was wild. Lots of teenagers and some were dancing. The Spoiled were fun and looked very cool. The whole scene was amazing. And the sheriff department showed up to shut it all down. They tried to stop the show, but The Spoiled kept playing. So the cops cut the power to the building. The Spoiled kept playing. It was awesome. The cops arrested lead singer Brian Elliott because he wouldn't stop playing and singing even when the rest of the band did. At that point, I developed a sense of awe for Brian Elliott, which has never worn off. After this night, Black Flag paled in comparison. We have a very very special guest in the audience tonight, Sid Olson from The Spoiled. Everybody, where is he? Stand up, Sid. There he is. I want you to go talk to him after the show. He's a legend. Stand up for Sid, goddammit. Thanks for coming, Sid. Okay, around the same time, some metal bands formed. I traced it all the way back to Collision in 1984. From what I can tell, they were barely the first band. Matt Leslie on drums, who later went on to start Fanny Alger with Quinn and I. Had a good chance to play with Matt in a band called Blue Green. Clay Blair, Matt Nelson, and Brad Leese were also in Collision. Not even a year later, chaos explodes onto the scene of Fidalgo Island. Van Devlar on vocals and guitar, Eli Montoya, who is here tonight with us. He's somewhere. Where's Eli? He's here. Thad Ballslider on the bright green drum set. John Caulfield, who's in Pavlov Jones now, and then Brad Leese again, who we had the pleasure of playing with in Stagnant Water. I looked all over for a picture of those bright green drums. This is the best surviving picture I could find. If anybody has a better one, I'd like to see. It looks like this one was attacked by a vat of acid. But there's Thad Ballslider in front of the green drums. Okay, KSVR, how did that impact us? It's an important part of the local punk scene, if I'm not mistaken. Anybody listen to KSVR? I met Tim Fisher when we were in grade school. We instantly became great friends because of a common love of video games and the Dr. Demento radio show. We love those songs. Tim and I went to a class, Mount Vernon High School, called the radio broadcasting class. It was taught by one of the best teachers in the entire history of Mount Vernon High School. Does anybody know his name? Mark frickin' Pearson, where is he? Stand up, Mark! Where are you? There he is, right there! Give it up for Mark Pearson! This guy's impact cannot be understated because not just him and I, but a bunch of people went through his radio class. And what did he teach us? He taught us how to put on a radio show from scratch, from nothing to full production every 2 weeks, Thursday Night Live. We started with selling the radio spots, then we wrote the ad copy, then we produced the ads, put them on the radio in a live show. Total DIY. Mark taught us that you don't need anybody's permission to do a show. You don't need the big money. You don't need some corporation. You don't need to ask their permission. Go out and do it yourself. So when we graduated high school, we find out at Skagit Valley College they've got a radio station. And Tim and I started a show called The Tim and Shane Show. Did anybody hear it? Good. It's here that we met. It's here that we met Jerry Steamer. He was the program director. And we met a 15-year-old skater, snowboarder, trick BMX rider named Jason Loeb. He spent so much money on his hairstyle that he had no money for shoes. We decided we would start Stagnant Water. Stagnant Water was a thing 1987, 6 years after The Spoiled blew up the scene. We started over here in Mount Vernon putting on shows. Over the years we had some lineup changes. Whoops, 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 whoops. We had Matt Conrad on guitar. Awesome guitar player. Henry Sankwicks joined us on bass, and Chris McCurkin on guitar. And then we got the first guy with a mohawk in Mount Vernon to play bass for us. Roger frickin' Bennett. Brad Neese also came in, the guy that was in Collision and Chaos. He was in the first two metal bands. He joined Stagnant Water for a while. And we decided, okay, well, if we're gonna play a punk rock band, we can't just keep playing these places that get shut down. Can't play, people's house parties that 200 people show up and the police don't like that. We need a venue. We need a legitimate venue where we can actually play some real shows. That's when I made a phone call that changed my life. I made a phone call to a guy named Mark Zappa Daniel. And I had heard this guy was putting on hippie shows out at the Rexville Grange. And I called him up and I said, hey Mark, would you be interested in having some punk bands there? And he's like, ooh, sure, why not? So, on March 25th, 1988, Stagnant Water has our first show out at the Rexville Grange with a band called Moral Crux from Ephrata, Washington, very near Moses Lake. They're on the Velvetone label, which is the same label as the Screaming Trees at that time. And we always thought we were the first punk band to play the Rexville Grange. Jim Zappa told me so much. But as doing some research for this show, for this very show, Zappa came across a poster, a mysterious poster. What is this? I forgot all about this. 6 months, almost exactly to the date before Stagnant Water played, there was a metal show with Chaos and Matt Speck's band, Executor. And over here on the left is a little thing that says, opening band, punk rock by Iconoclast. And we were like, whoa! Iconoclast, who was that? I text Eli from Chaos, and he's like, I think it was Dan Stello and Chris Sanderson. So I call it, or we text Dan, were you in Iconoclast? He's like, oh yeah, I forgot all about that. That was me and Chris Sanderson and Joel Schumacher. Zappa gave us the name Iconoclast. But then we found out there was another band called Iconoclast, so we changed our name to Can't Understand Normal Thinking. Who opened for us at this very show 6 months later. So what's that mean? Not only is Stagnant Water not the first band to play there, Can't Understand Normal Thinking was the two first bands to play the Rexville Grange because they opened this show. So next time you see Dan Stello, give him a high five for being the first punk band to play the Grange. Other cool venues included Hillcrest Park, the Common Grounds, Crappy Dog Bistro, Draft Pits, Hanks, Althea's, the Brown Lantern, and Anacortes, the Anacortes Eagles, and Elks, the Mount Vernon Moose Lodge, the Knights of Columbus, and Vasa Hall. Over the years, Stagnant Water made some recordings. First of all, our 1987 full-length release, What's Up Your Butt? Produced and recorded by the now world-famous Conrad Uno, who went on to produce Bud Honey, the Presidents of the United States of America, and a zillion other great bands. Stagnant Water also recorded a CD called What Happened, when CDs were new format. Now you can buy some of these downstairs tonight. They're for sale. We were on numerous compilations, including this one called Oh God, My Mom's on Channel 10, which was released by none other than Nardwuar, the Human Serviette. Anybody heard of him? We're still great friends with Nardwuar today. He's a super nice guy. If you haven't seen any of his videos, look up Nardwuar, Nardwuar, on YouTube. We were also on a compilation with 3 Bellingham bands called Eat My Dust, a tribute to Dust Blair. This is a limited release record on colored vinyl, and you can also buy some of that downstairs if you're interested. Very rare recording. We were included in the Encyclopedia of Northwest Music. where author James Bush inaccurately predicted that I would be mayor of Mount Vernon, Washington by the year 2007. Okay, these next few slides might get me in trouble, but I want to preface them with this. These are just a few of the punk bands that we played with back in those days. This is not a definitive list, but if you stick around at the end of the show, we've got a bigger list that we're going to play, and we want to show it to you. But just a toucher, we played with Cranial Decomposition, System Victim, Aaron Nation, with one of Mount Vernon's coolest punks. One of his coolest punks, Aaron Lamont. We played with Cedar Woolley's first punk band, Mitzelblick. Newbert Circus, The Ugly Truth, Love Rash, Force Feed, The Gift Machine, The Weirding Way. Brian Elliott was in a band called Gravel with Dale Robinson, tracing right back to the Spoiled. Prozac Staple, and a couple bands I was in also, Lawn Dart and Blue Green. All right. Now the future. We have a big, strong scene. We built this on the backs of the people that came from before us, down at the Seven Cedars, and through the Rexville Grange, into the new venues that are playing today. Here's just a list of a few of the cool bands that are actively gigging right now. Remember when I talked about the thousands and thousands of years of indigenous music that's being played on the shores of Skagit River forever? That tradition continues with Catherine Paul, who is this daughter of Kevin Paul, the famous Swinomish artist. Catherine goes by the name Black Belt Eagle Scout, and she's on a nationwide tour right now with Sleater Kinney. But when she comes back, go see Black Belt Eagle Scout. Also, a few other bands you're gonna not want to miss. Your Girls, Pretty Much Nothing. Hired Mules, which includes a couple guys from Mitzelblick. And Enduro, Brian Elliott, Sid Olson, John Lunsford, as well as Flying Bobby B. Bavokes on drums. Oh, and Brian Tottenham on guitar, on bass guitar. That's how he plays bass. You're gonna see Fanny Alger tonight. We're a real live rock and roll band. The beat goes on at facebook.com/group/SkagitPunk. This is where we sit and reminisce about the old days, post pictures of cool punk shows that we forgot happened, post recordings and pictures of gigs that are going on, and also what's happening now. Maybe post a new show that's happening at the Cats West Side. So go and tune into this Facebook group, you're going to see what's happening. Also, we're shouting out to the AnacortesMusicProject.org. Thank you. These guys are making a tremendously huge investment. Very good, very good. A tremendously huge investment in our next generation of musicians. They have an instrument lending library, so your kids can go, if they want to try out drums, see if that's for them. You don't have to invest in a $1,000 drum set, just go borrow one from the amp. They have classes and courses and you can learn how to play guitar there, and bass and clarinet. And this is a picture of Quinn and I teaching kids how to do stage presence, teaching them how to do kickouts. What's the deal? Oh, music. He's saying we're here for music. Hey, you sound kind of familiar. I've heard that voice before. Hey, everybody, it's Mark Zappa! There he is! Oh my gosh! You lost your head! It's him for real, friends! Well, what do you got to say about this? You having fun?
I'm having fun. Are you having fun still?
I'm totally having fun. I'm totally having fun. Oh, you got spectacles now. Oh, you look good. They match your hair. All right. Well, hey, what do you think? Do you have something to say here?
I got a few things.
You got something prepared here? Okay, here. Take that mic right there.
Hey, good evening. So 37 years ago, when we were still young, could stand up without sound effects, and we didn't get woken up by our bladder 3 times a night, I was approached by Shane and a few other people, young whippersnappers. I was running rock and roll shows out at Rexville Grange, still following the Grateful Dead, which I still do. So the kids said, you know, we like the Grateful Dead and the 60s music, but we listen to this new stuff. Well, I wasn't insured, and the people I rented the Grange from were kind of conservative, farmer, rednecky guys. And being true to my generation, like each generation, as a responsible adult, I was fearful of the change, and my ears weren't accustomed to this new sound. Shane and company and Eli, who's here from Chaos, apparently approached me and kind of talked me into considering it. Well, Shane took me twice or 3 times to mosh pits, and back then, it was pretty gentle. And by the way, I'll be offering moshing for senior classes during the break. Anyway, the punk rock scene took hold in Skagit County. They convinced me, and as we said, I thought Shane and Stagnant Water were the first band. I stand corrected, it was Chaos, and the other band. So, in case you didn't know, 37 is 1/3 of 111, and there was coincidentally 111 shows at Rexville Grange. So this show and celebration is a numerologically correct event. Growing up in the 60s, music was the cement of our generation. And as each generation found their sound and expressed their stuff with growing up and expressing joy and politics and sex and all that stuff, the sound changes and each generation looks at the next generation and kind of goes, oh, poo-pah. I'm glad I was part and convinced by these guys to start and listen to their wish to have their generation's music. And it's with a great pleasure and an honor to once again introduce Skagit's premier and first punk band, Stagnant Water.
It's really cool. Peter finds this ancient voodoo statue and is blessed by some evil witch doctor and it brings mishap to the entire Brady family. I don't want to give it away, but all I can say is it's going to be a lot better than the time Bobby played cash with Joe Namath. The 70s didn't exist. The 70s didn't exist. The 70s didn't exist. The 70s didn't exist. You know, when Carl called me up and said, I just have one request. Can you please play Nut Baby? Can we get the drummer a mic? I know I paid you extra to turn his off, but he found out. Okay, well, we're going to do this song, but maybe we can bring somebody on stage or something to figure out why his mic no working. All right. Careful, Jerry. Next pandemic, you might need that. So, Nut Baby! stuff to say. He's on it. He's on it. All right. All right. Well, let's start this one and move right through then.